We're back here on Pastor Mike. Now, Jemar, I was watching on social media scrolling and I had heard some tell about this Evangelicals for Harris call. And then I see some of the guests, and obviously you got some people who are my people, in the mix. And then I see Dr. Jemar Tisby. And then I squint and I see Mr. Blue Check Verified in the
No, the footnote.
so you were on Evangelicals for Harris, a call that happened recently that was in support of the vice president and her campaign and specifically her candidacy. And I want you to talk about the purpose of this call, the design behind it, and why you decided to be a part of this.
So I got the call from the host of the event, who is our sister, Ekemini Uwan, a theologian and
Yes,
co-host
yes.
of the Truth's Table podcast. And she asked me to be a part of it. And honestly, I didn't even hesitate. I said, yeah, let's do it. Uh, I don't know much about it. Like, I'm the wrong person to ask about the whys and the where-to-fors and how it came together. All I knew was this was an opportunity, in my view, to talk about a different approach to faith and politics. And then they start filling out the guest speakers list. So this whole call is in the pattern of the calls that have been happening for a couple of weeks now, where you hop on Zoom, there's, probably more than a dozen people all speaking for like 5 to 7 minutes, if that. And so they started filling out the speaker list. It's our good friends, Sandra Maria Van Opstal, Latasha Morrison from
Yeah.
Be the Bridge, of
Lisa
course,
Sharon Harper.
Kemeny, Lisa Sharon Harper. You can go on and on and on. Amazing people. And from the beginning, we were attacked. Not even just attacked, we were targeted. So let me read you one that came out the day that my participation was announced. I don't know who this person is. I didn't know, but Laura Loomer, founder of Loomered, and is a self-styled investigative journalist. And what she said, she went through the list and basically did a hit piece on each of us on Twitter/X. Of me, she said, one of the speakers listed by Kamala Harris's coalition, which I don't even know if there's an official link between Evangelicals for Harris and the campaign. She said, Jemar Tisby, a black supremacist, anti-white racist author who thinks white people are inherently bad and evil, gives no proof for that. According to Jemar, 30% of Christians are white nationalists analogous to the KKK. Jemar said, in today's terms, moderate believers in white Christian nationalism, together with adherents, make up nearly 30% of the population. That's not a gotcha, Laura. That's polling that shows white Christian nationalism is not a binary, it's a spectrum. The most ardent adherents are called ambassadors, and right next to them are accommodators. They both hold similar beliefs, just at different varying levels of intensity. But when it comes to the polls, when it comes to voting, when it comes to political policies, they are identical as political creatures. And so, yeah, it's about 30% of the population. The ambassadors are about 10%, and the accommodators are about 20%. She went on to say, as you can see from the post below, she did a bunch of screenshots. Nice white people and good white people are not positive. What I had said was, Miss Laura, that nice white people, good white people aren't necessarily positive because they can be the modern day equivalent of the white moderate that MLK talks about in his letter from Birmingham jail. Right? So you're going to say it, get it right. And she goes again and calls me a black supremacist who preaches hatred against white people. And Jamar's idea of democracy is forcing white people to pay reparations. He said so himself. And then she ends, Kamala Harris's policies are racist. That was just the beginning. That was just the beginning. And it wasn't just me. It was virtually everyone who participated.
So knowing that you were going to get this, because you already knew that this was going to be the response from that section and segment of people, why was it a no-brainer for you to decide to be a part?
I think in years past, when I was more embedded in reformed and evangelical circles, I would have wrung my hands about the responses of white evangelicals. And it might have been, I might have been worried enough not to participate. But what I knew now on the far side of these very painful experiences that you and I have both walked through together is they already don't like me. They already don't agree with my politics or theology. So me not participating wasn't all of a sudden going to make them fans of mine. They weren't going to subscribe to my Substack or buy the books or be open-minded or fair about my views. So who cares? Who cares? You aren't going to persuade anybody to like you who's already written you off. So that was a big deal. That's why it was, that's part of why it was a no-brainer, is I was far less concerned this election than in previous cycles about what the far right would say about me. I knew it was going to come. I knew it was going to come. And then the other reason it was a no-brainer is what we frequently talked about. Democracy is at stake. This ain't no regular election. And even if it wasn't democracy writ large at stake, you've got someone who is convicted in court of multiple crimes, someone whose speeches are increasingly incoherent, someone who is unfit and unqualified in every way you can think of to hold the highest political office of the most powerful nation on the planet. Like that alone, right? And so it was just a chance for me to articulate from a faith perspective, from, a historical perspective, why I think this is such a critical election.
When you got on the call, I wasn't able to be on too long because I had to teach Bible study, but that's why I missed you. So
Good excuse. Good. Yeah.
right,
You got the doctor's note.
Jesus gave me the get out of the call free
Excused
card.
absence.
But what did you say? And I want
Mm,
you to tell the people why you said what you say. So I thought it was very striking to hear the passion that you had. We talked obviously before the call
mhm.
about what you were going to say and your approach, but you quoted some heavy hitters. You quoted some people who mean so much to us, but also who have kind of charted this course against what would be the backlash of people who already not just don't like you, but who believe you're a heretic. I mean, let's just be
Oh yeah.
honest. They
Yeah.
believe you're a
Yeah.
heretic. They believe you're a racist. They are completely against you in every way. So, what did you say on the call?
It was three parts. Presenting the problem, giving some historical information and perspective, and offering the charge. So I don't know if that passes your homiletical muster as a
It's not a
preacher, but
sermon, brother. It's not a sermon, brother. You do your thing, man.
oh, I was preaching. I was preaching. I started by saying what I often say, which is white Christian nationalism is the greatest threat to democracy and the witness of the church in the United States today. And then I said, well, but how did it have such political ascendancy? Why does it have so much power in this present moment? It's because white evangelicals have a thin political theology, a theology that has left them ill-equipped to address a problem that they helped create. And then I described, well, what is a thin political theology? It's my one of my biggest frustrations with evangelical politics. It traffics in both sides ism. Both sides are equally bad. Both sides are equally wrong. Both sides are equally corrupt. Therefore, I can support neither. A thin political theology is a single issue kind of theology, which, of course, you can have policy priorities, but you have to see the interconnectedness of issues and knowing that your desire to make progress on one policy issue is connected to a whole bunch of other stuff that you got to take into consideration when you vote. A thin political theology says there's only one true Christian party, one true Christian candidate, one true Christian way to vote. So I contrasted a thin political theology with a thick political theology. A thick political theology is more robust. It exists within tensions, it has nuance to it. It doesn't take the, oh, I can't participate approach, the apathetic approach, but it takes decisive action for democracy. A thick political theology doesn't just address the symptoms, it looks at the source of a problem. A thick political theology isn't primarily geared toward fear and intimidation about the future, but rather paints a constructive vision for a better future. And a thick political theology recognizes, hey, we are in a democracy, not a theocracy. And therefore, there will be people with views I personally reject. But in a democracy, in a pluralistic society, we have to make room for those views too. So I contrasted those two. I talked about some folks from history. I loved incorporating this quote from Malcolm X. He said, of all our studies, history is best qualified to reward our research. Ooh, thank you, Malcolm X. And I just said, as we look at history in a two-party system, there's always a party of progress and a party of regress. And so I talked about this never ceases to amaze me. It's 1868. It's the first election after the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
One of the parties is the Seymour Blair ticket, and their motto is this. Mind you, right after the Civil War, their mind you is this. This is a white man's country. Let white men rule.
Mm-hmm.
That's the platform. And then you got folks like Frederick Douglass saying, I love this. He wrote a letter to somebody, said, for the life of me, I cannot see how any honest colored man who has brains enough to put two ideas together can allow himself under the notion of independence to give any comfort to that party. I just love the realism there. Frederick Douglass knew what it was. He knew that there was a party that was going to promote Black civil rights and a party that was going to try to drag them back to when they thought America was great. And then I ended with Fannie Lou Hamer. I gotta shout out Fannie Lou Hamer. And we're right on the cusp of the Democratic National Convention as we record this. She spoke at the 1964 Democratic National Convention, and she ended saying, is this America the land of the free and the home of the brave, where we have to sleep with our telephones off the hooks because our lives be threatened daily, because we want to live as decent human beings in America? And the charge was simple. Is this America?
Mm.
What kind of nation will we be? And I charged Evangelicals for Harris to employ a thick theology that prioritizes love for neighbor and the spirit of justice to protect and promote democracy.
That's powerful, I think, mainly because of the distinction between what is and what would be considered a strong and firm political theology that has a lot more nuance and complexity, and then the weakness of just kind of these cliches that we bought into. And Jemar, I want to talk about the cliches, but
Mm.
let's take another break. We're in break mode right now, so we got to take another break, and we'll be right back. So I want to talk about some of these cliches and why they're so dangerous.